Nanda, Ipal, Bakrausi Kanasi Session Ama. Hello, I'm Kathleen Carl. I'm the Policy Officer for Pollinators within Welsh Government. These sessions are being recorded and will be available afterwards through the Wales Biodiversity Partnership website. In the first session, we have 3 speakers. More information on the speakers can be found on the Conference Whova platform. During the presentation, please feel free to ask questions or make comments in the chat bar, and we'll come back to them in the Q&A session later. Firstly, I would like to introduce Kate Petty, who is going to talk about Plantlife's Road Verge campaign. Over to you, Kate.
Thank you very much, Kathleen. Diolch yn fawr. Mae'n bleser mawr i gael y cyfle i siarad efo chi heddiw am ymgyrch Plantlife i tresnewid rheolaeth ymylon ffyrdd ar gyfer bioamrywiaeth. It's a real pleasure to be part of this conference and to talk to you a bit today about Plantlife's Road Verge campaign. So for those of you who perhaps don't know, Plantlife is a British charity which is dedicated to the conservation of wildflowers, plants and fungi. Back in 2013, in response to an increasing outcry from our members and members of the public who were really distraught at wildflowers on verges being mown down, Plantlife started our Road Verge campaign. At the centre of the campaign is our petition to councils, which has now been signed almost 120,000 times and has really captured people's interests. We're incredibly grateful for the funding of the Prince of Wales's charitable fund, which back in 2018 gave us funding, which has allowed us to work with more councils and more highways organisations in order to provide guidance on how best to transform the management of road verges to really encourage biodiversity. The campaign also does a lot of work to raise awareness of the importance of road verges, to foster the love of these habitats and the interests in them, and to really challenge the idea that whether the verges can be is either neat and tidy manicured lawns or just litter-strewn thickets at the side of the road. So why do we care about verges? Why do they matter so much? Well, simply put, if you like, and relevant to the focus of the conference this week, they can sustain such high levels of biodiversity. 45% of the total flora of the UK, that's over 700 species of wildflower, can be found on our road verges. Some of these are very common, but others are incredibly rare, such as fen ragwort or the Deptford pink. And verges of different types provide such diverse sources of pollen nectar throughout the year, from celandines in February through to Devil's Bit scabious in September, as well as providing such an important habitat for insects when they overwinter, or food sources for larvae as well. So they can sustain such high levels of plants, and as we like to say at Plantlife, where these wildflowers lead, wildlife follows. So a wealth of bees, bugs, bats, birds and butterflies all rely on these wonderful habitats. And when you consider that we only have 3% of our wildflower meadows or species-rich grassland left in the UK, that often quoted stat that we've lost 97% since the 1930s, you can really appreciate that road verges really are a vital refuge for wildlife. So whilst the focus of this conference is on biodiversity, I also wanted to mention a wealth of other benefits that well-managed verges can bring. So alongside the enhanced biodiversity and the increase or creation of pollinator corridors, well-managed verges can lock in carbon, they can help with water or flood management, provide buffers to air pollution or noise pollution, as well as enhancing the local character or providing us, local communities, commuters, with an encounter with nature in our daily lives. So transforming the management of our road verges can help us in tackling the climate and ecological emergencies. They can also help us to enhance our connection with nature and improve well-being. And by making management more sustainable and more efficient, they can help to reduce the burden of management over time. So really to only think of verges as space adjacent to our roads is to really miss a significant opportunity. With all this in mind, Plantlife set out a vision for verges. This really is to see verges managed for wildlife as a matter of course, and we'd like to see this in order to restore the wonderful habitats that we have out there, and to expand on the wonderful flower-rich habitats that we have, to create this wonderful network across the country. This is to make sure that the species survive for their own sake, whether that's common species or the very rare species that we have, that they survive for all of the environmental benefits that I've talked about, and also to enhance our contact with nature. The work of the campaign is also to ensure that roads are kept safe through this different type of management, and our guidance works to help complement safety considerations as well. There really has been a perfect storm, if you like, for verges over many decades, due to changing management regimes in recent generations, with the move to over-frequent mowing, which has deprived plants the opportunity to set seed. This, coupled with increased nitrogen emissions and increased pressure on budgets, has really left a lot of verges, a lot of the network in not a great state. Therefore, in the last few years, we've been working to develop guidance to help overcome some of the challenges that exist in managing the road verge network, and to enable the realisation of all these wonderful benefits, both the biodiversity and other ecosystem services that verges can bring. Our most recent guidelines, our technical best practice guidelines, was launched last September thanks to funding from the Rhys Jeffreys Road Fund. And this was put together by through a partnership with highways and national transport agencies, with statutory organisations, industry partners, and with other environmental charities. And this cross-sector approach has really set out a different approach to managing these verges in order to transform as much of the nationwide road verge network as is possible, really in order to help make management of road verges more efficient and more sustainable, to reduce this management burden over time, whilst all importantly enhancing the biodiversity value of our verges. So I wanted to start off with a more of a quick look into the guidelines and what you can find in there. So if you're after more information on the key arguments or the overview, then the executive summary and the introduction is really for you. The rest of the guide gives detailed technical information on our best practice management advice. So that might be through assessing or monitoring, and these sections really bookend the main management section of the guidelines. The management section gives you information on the sort of good principles to keep in mind when managing grassland road verges. And then the rest of the management section walks you through the different scenarios that you might be looking to manage. So that might be enhancing amenity grassland verges. It might be restoring the open grassland network, which is most likely the majority of the verge network. There's also information on how to maintain and how to restore species-rich grass verges, some of which may be your roadside nature reserves or local wildlife sites. And there's also information on how to manage competitive or problem species, and also a section on creating new species-rich verges as well. And throughout the guide, you'll find lots of different case studies from around the UK on projects that have been working to implement these guidelines. So in the time I have available today, I just wanted to pick out some of the 5 good principles for improving and managing grassland road verge habitats. So the first of these is to really highlight that regular management is essential for maintaining species diversity on verges. So both no cutting at all and cutting too much can both cause problems for species-rich grassland. Importantly, the timing of this is really key. So we want to allow plants to grow, flower and set seed before they're cut in order to encourage the natural regeneration processes. I'll speak a bit about cut and collect, why the collection of grass clippings or arisings is so important to the biodiversity of the verge. And also the last 2 points here that really go hand in hand, managing people's perceptions of what wild verges might be and communicating any change that happens in regimes, and also the power of engaging local communities in improving road verge habitats. So to say again, wildlife friendly management of verges doesn't mean no cutting at all. No cutting can actually lead to a reduction in species diversity in grassland, and also cutting also helps us to maintain safe roads, which is crucial. So there's a balance to be had here. You'll find this sort of cutting calendar in the guidelines. Ideally, we suggest a 2-cut management approach. This really mimics traditional meadow species-rich grassland management, and different options are set out for the timings of these cuts, which might suit your verges or your cutting schedule, some a bit better than others. So a cut twice a year and the collection of the arisings can really help to suppress coarse grasses and to reduce the management burden over time. And if only 1 cut is possible, then ideally this would happen in late summer or early autumn, and wherever possible, the removal of the cuttings. We know this is a challenge, but we know there are lots of different local authorities out there working on solutions to this, and people working towards, even if it's not possible tomorrow, working towards bringing in collection of arisings into cutting regimes. So talking of collecting arisings, why are they so important? Collecting the clippings has several benefits. So it can take away the thatch that builds up. This really helps to open up the grassland sward, allowing for delicate wildflowers to thrive and to come through the verge. Really importantly, it also helps to reduce soil fertility, which really helps to favour wildflowers and helps to reduce the overcompetition from thug or sort of nitrogen loving plants in the verge. And this also helps to decrease grass growth year on year. So less grass growth year on year means reducing the management burden through having to cut less. And this approach is growing around the UK and is following on from the work that's been done by Dorset Council to implement cut and collect on their network, and to have shown that they can reduce management burden both in terms of time and cost over several years. I also wanted to mention here that verges don't have to be long to be wildlife friendly. So the cut and collect approach can often help you to achieve shorter verges, but that are really rich in low or short growing wildflowers, which can be really great for pollinators, but these can be fantastic for urban areas or areas where there are access or safety considerations as well. As I mentioned before, another one of the principles is the communication and engagement, and these it's been really fantastic to see the growing awareness and interest in the natural world and changing attitudes around neat and tidy requests. But there are still negative perceptions around wilder verges out there. And it can really help the success of changing regimes or projects to communicate well the change that is happening, instead, say, of just leaving areas of longer grass without telling anybody what's happening. So there have been some fantastic examples of signage which have been used in recent years, which can really help, as well as sort of press releases or local press work to communicate to constituents or residents what is happening. Another option here for really communicating change is to frame the verges. The picture you can see on the left of the slide here is from Ceredigion Council. The framing of the verge approach on this can be used in local green space or meadows work as well. So this is cutting the first metre or the first edge and framing the long grass behind. And this helps with complaints around areas being neglected, because the management looks intentional and it looks like this is being done for a reason. And then the other thing to say here is there's great opportunity to harness the power and enthusiasm of local community groups. And there are some great examples of local groups working with councils and getting involved in the collection of cuttings or planting of yellow rattle seeds, the semi-parasitic plant that can really help to reduce grass growth in areas, or the planting of native wildflower plugs in some verges as well. It's been really fantastic in the last couple of years to really see more and more councils starting to embrace changing management regimes of verges to encourage all of these biodiversity benefits and other benefits. And there's some really real positive progress that's being made throughout Wales. I'm sure you've seen a lot of really positive announcements in the press in the last year from Denbighshire, from Gwynedd, and other councils too. And I know there's a lot of other work happening behind the scenes, and it's really fantastic that you're going to hear from a lot of the councils that are working to improve biodiversity on their verges today. There's also been an increase in public support for these projects too, especially as I think lockdown has really helped people to see the potential of road verges as wildlife havens, and the wonder of the road verges producing all these wonderful wildflowers that we see. So there really is a great opportunity now to make changes in management regimes. Another Welsh project that I wanted to quickly highlight is the work of the North and Mid Wales Trunk Road agents to use natural seeding principles to restore verges. You'll find the first case study from the Conwy Portals work project in our best practice guidelines. But this year our cameras were also there to capture another part of this scheme, which was to restore verges around Porthmadog. This is a fantastic example of using green hay, which in this case was harvested from Plantlife's Coronation Meadow, which is managed by the local wildlife trust in the area. And this green hay was used to transform the nearby verges through first a scarification process and then the spreading of green hay. And if you'd like to know more about this, the process is available to watch on the video that we have on YouTube. So just to close things up on some positive notes, as you've heard, there's lots of great progress happening in Wales, and this is happening across the UK, with lots more councils working to restore and enhance verges, all with increased encouragement from the public. And it's great to see lots of different projects getting off the ground. There are still barriers to overcome, and we know change isn't going to happen overnight. After all, it's taken decades to reach the situation that we unfortunately find ourselves in today. But that leads me on to say that at Plantlife, we're really here to encourage and support and help this transformation of the whole road verge network happen as much as we can, whether that's through showcasing or celebrating your projects, or working with you to work out the best management options for your network. So whether you're from a highways team, whether you're from you're a councillor or a contractor, an individual with an interest in improving your local verges or a local wildlife group, please do get in touch with us. Tell us about what you're working on, and we're more than happy to support you in that work. You'll also find lots more information on the Road Verge campaign on our Road Verge campaign website. Also, you'll find here the free PDF copies of our best practice guidelines, and also the Good Verge Guide, which has information on managing other road verge habitats such as woodland verges. And you can also keep up to date of the campaign progress through our social media channels as well. So that just leaves me to say thank you, Diolch yn fawr I chi am wrando. Thank you so much for your time today, and please feel free to get in touch with us. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Kate. That was a fabulous presentation, and for explaining the importance of cut and collect. That was really important. I really liked what you said about where wildflowers lead, wildlife will follow. I think that's really, really, really well said. We've got a few minutes for some questions before the next speaker. So I don't know if you want to take those now.
Yes,
we've got
more than happy to.
Thank you. How do you go and get buy-in from local councils to manage roadside verges better for wildlife? That was from Rebecca.
It's a good question. I think there's a growing trend for local wildlife groups or local advocate groups that are coming together to look to improve the verges in their town or in their parish, and to, in some of those cases, take on the management in those areas. There are some really great examples of groups around England. There's a group in Shropshire called Restoring Shropshire's Verges Project, which is a local community group that's working in liaison with the council and the National Trust, the AONB, and with support from us as well, to engage the council in changing management. And another group that you might be interested in is Wildflower Lewis down in East Sussex, who are working in partnership with the council. I think it's really sort of making those key arguments clear as to why the verges really matter, but also the benefits that can be made to the management burden, and how the council can really be helped by adopting a changing management, a different management regime that's more efficient as well.
Lovely, thanks very much. And I also was really delighted to see the use of green hay to reseed verges. And is that connected to the Magnificent Meadow project?
It was that particular green hay came from one of Plantlife's Coronation Meadows, but wasn't part of the Magnificent Meadows project in itself. But I know a lot of the work my colleagues and others are doing to increase the sort of provision of green hay, the amount of green hay that is there to help transform other meadows, but also for road verges as well. And there are some great examples of actually some species, special roadside verges that are wonderful species rich verges, actually being used as the donor sites for green hay to then transform other pockets of road verge. So there's a real potential for green hay to be used in this sense as well.
Lovely. And we got a question from Christina Taylor. And she says Merthyr Mawr Heritage Group is a scheme involving local residents to plant up their grass verges with early flowering bulbs. This means there's an early source of nutrients for insects and insects, and residents can then mow their lawns after the bulbs have died down. But they've got a problem in that they need a license from the council before they can plant. Do you know if there's a way that they can avoid paying for the license, or any other solutions that you could offer?
It's an interesting question, and I know through some of the regulations in the Highways Act, some local authorities will require planting licenses or change of cultivation use that covers some road verges. I don't know of the specifics around Merthyr, but some other local authorities, in their drive to encourage biodiversity, are sort of waiving the license fees for these sorts of projects. I don't know whether there's a better way around this in Merthyr specifically, but conversations probably with your local councillors or the highways or transport portfolio holder, or with the environmental lead of the council, might help to see if there's a way around this as a sort of a wider community parish work.
Lovely, thanks very much. Thanks, that was really, really interesting. If you wouldn't mind holding on, Kate, for a wee while, just in case we have time to take further questions later on.